What is good people? You are now listening to a special bonus episode of Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. I am your humble narrator, Danny Foxworth, and I just want to drop this episode just to talk about today's events and how great of an experience today was. Before I get into that, I don't think I related on this podcast, but this past Thursday, I was also a guest on one of my other favorite podcasts, which is the Fiyastarter Podcast. It's Fiya Starter Podcast. And this most recent appearance, they dropped the episode on Thursday, and I got to kick my feet up and just talk with them for damn near 4 hours. And you also got to see my reaction to the Rangers winning the World Series in real time. And it's always a beautiful experience chopping it up with my brothers over there, just cutting up, having fun, jokes galore. And it's good to stop in every so often just to be in their presence and just to jump in the double dutch rope, so to speak. Great, just great time on that podcast. Now, I want to talk about today's events. So today was actually just getting home, but today was the homecoming for South Carolina State University, which for those of y'all that don't know, it's an HBCU. And I talked to one of my other podcast brethren, actually is a guy by the name of 12 Kyle, who was a guest on here 2 times. He was a guest on At the Plate, and I just had him on since we last spoke about 3 weeks ago, just waxing poetic about the year 1996, which y'all make sure y'all check that episode out. We're just talking about things that happen in current events and music and sports and things that went on in our personal lives in the year 1996. So make sure y'all go check that episode. I had a lot of fun doing that. But and I've also been on his podcast, which is the 12 Kyle podcast. He drops episodes every Thursday and he does bonus episodes on Sundays. And he had me on this podcast to talk about my favorite rap album of all time, which is Black on Both Sides by Mos Def. And make sure you check his podcast out too, because he has a lot of super dope episodes. He just recorded his 500th episode, man. So big shout out to 12 Kyle, because he is one of my biggest podcast inspirations, because me, a lot like him, don't really cover our episodes really aren't centered on current events. We just talk about things that are just on our mind, or things that or ideas that we find to be, cool and dope and just different from the typical podcast subject matter. And he's been a tremendous influence / inspiration into putting paint where it ain't, just talking about stuff that other people aren't talking about. And to finally get to meet him in real life. For those of y'all that also, he played football at South Carolina State. He was a wide receiver back in the early 90s. And he's from Florence, South Carolina. He currently resides in Atlanta. So he came down from Atlanta. I came up from Moncks Corner. Orangeburg is where the school is located. It's about an hour drive from me. And we got to chop it up in real life. I saw him out tailgating with his brother. Shout out to his brother Damon, and I got to meet him, and I got to meet his beautiful wife Sharice. And man, just the initial meetup, like the dap and just a long, just great embrace. Like, yo, it's so good to see you, man. Golly. And I cannot stress enough how important of a meeting that was with me, and how thankful I am that I got to chop it up with him. We chopped it up for, good Lord, it seemed like forever, seriously, but the conversation never got stale. And I'm glad that I was able to tell him to his face how much his podcast means to me in terms of the directions in which I choose to take this podcast. And also getting the affirmation and the basically the vote of confidence from out of his mouth to my ears. That really made me feel good, and it really made me really made me realize that, what I'm doing is not in vain. And there's people out there that really enjoy what I do. I don't do it for numbers. I mainly do it because I feel like the content is dope, but getting that real life confirmation from others, from other listeners, and especially from other podcasters, that what I'm doing is great, and I'm really taking the podcast in the right direction. It was a beautiful thing to hear. And yeah, so we chopped it up, and then afterwards went inside the stadium and we watched the football game, and South Carolina State played Howard. And I love going to South Carolina State games. It's been a few years since the last time I went to a homecoming, but just a beautiful, super black ass experience. You walk in and you just smell the smoke from all of the grills and the smokers. I mean, there's people frying fish. I mean, just you seeing people dropping the slingshots. Everybody, young and old. You hear the Southern soul music. You hear the King George jamming. You heard some Marvin Cease jamming out to somebody's speakers, and got in the game. The band, the Marching 101. Shout out to them. They had the place rocking. Of course, they played the textbook James Brown passed the peas, and the Q Dogs hit the end zone, and they was doing their steps and stuff. And it was just it's a very beautiful experience. And they tore it down in the halftime show per usual, and they ended up getting a win over Howard, 27-24. And it was great time, super good time, and left the game. And of course, I can't leave Orangeburg, without making a stop at Quick Trip. Which Quick Trip, y'all need to get it together and stop this bullshit and put up a Quick Trip in Charleston, because we need it out here. Well, when I say we, I mean me, because y'all slushies are top notch. So yeah, that was a great day today. Literally got in the house like 5 minutes ago, but I had to put this out there. And especially I had to give a big thank you to 12 Kyle, because you are one of the biggest reasons why I got into this podcasting thing. And I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all that you do. And thank you for the words of encouragement and the words of inspiration, and getting your ringing endorsement. That really just put the battery in my back, and I'll keep this podcast thing going a little bit longer. So I think that's a good enough time to put this thing in park. And so thank you all for listening, and make sure y'all like, download, and subscribe to Since We Last Spoke. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is at Danny Foxworth 843. Yeah, you can find all of the video versions of all my podcast episodes there. And thank y'all for listening. I appreciate it. And this has been another episode of Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. And until next time, y'all be good. Peace.